I'm Elise Orlowski, a senior video director here at Cramer.
And I'm Trip Underwood, a creative director at Cramer.
And at Cramer, we work with so many incredibly fascinating people from all over multiple industries.
We have so many great conversations, many that are just too good to keep to ourselves. So now we're sharing them with the world.
Right here from Cramer Studios.
This is Pivot Points.
Cut. Trip, it's good to see you.
In person,
I
not
know.
on Zoom.
What's going on? It's a little early. Usually we're drinking those craft artisan beers during this time, but it's a little early.
Stimulating conversation can happen in the morning.
We got our coffees, but are you drinking black?
Always.
Yeah, I got my eyes going up. So I'm really excited for this episode. Who do we have this morning?
Today we have Mike Sheehan, who is an incredibly accomplished and respected person within the Boston business community. And besides that, he and I actually have some stuff in common.
Oh, really?
We're both from the South Shore. He grew up
wow.
in the neighboring town to the one I grew up in. Both spent time in marketing and journalism. He was at the Boston Globe a little after that I got my writing career over there. And we both know a way around a bar, apparently. We'll get into that later, but he and I have that going for us. He was an advertising executive at Holliday for a number of years.
Awesome, amazing.
Which is a powerhouse here in Boston. After that, he went over to helm the Boston Globe, as I mentioned earlier, at a really interesting time for the paper. So Boston's paper of record was undergoing a change in ownership, which is huge for an institution that's been around for that long. At the same time, they were really desperately trying to figure out how to navigate the new media landscape, which is something they're still struggling with. So Mike took over there at a time of really amazing change in an industry that prior to that had really been kind of a stalwart, steady as she goes industry for years. So an interesting time to do that. And then more recently, after doing all that, he needed a break, so he went into the extremely taxing world of restaurant ownership.
Oh, wow. That's not easy during a pandemic.
Not at all. Out of the what's the cliche? Out of the fire into the frying pan, or vice versa. Out of the frying pan into the fire. Either way, it was hot in both places, so he's not getting as much of a rest as I'm sure he wanted to. So we'll get into that. And on top of all that, he is on the board of directors of at least 4 companies, I think, including Cramer, which is why we're talking to him today. Yeah, he's helped guide our ship for a number of years, which we're incredibly grateful for. So just all around, he has a knack for succeeding in a ton of industries that are constantly evolving, which I think is going to make him like the quintessential guest for this podcast.
Yeah, sounds perfect for Pivot Points.
Let's bring him in and talk to Mike Sheehan. I'm really looking forward to picking his brain.
Yeah, let's welcome him. Good morning, Mike. How you doing?
Hey, everyone. Good. How you doing?
Good to see you. We're super excited to have you on today. I think we're going to have a great conversation.
Well, it's good to be here. Thanks.
Cool. Mike, to kick it off, as I mentioned in the upfront, you've just been really incredibly successful in industries that really went through a lot of change when you were at the helm, both advertising, specifically print media, which is something I'm interested in because, as I mentioned, I spent some time at the Globe a little bit prior to your landing over there. And then also the restaurant industry, which is also constantly evolving, especially this past year. So as someone that has seen that from a couple of different ways, and from the top, you were in a leadership position in all of those industries. In your mind, what makes for what separates the good leaders from the great leaders when encountering change?
I think the main difference is there's a cliche that says that people don't like change, right? I think it's pretty universal.
If you've ever managed,
if you've ever managed a company, you realize that it's not true of everyone, but it's true of probably the majority of people that people don't like change. Mm-hmm. So I think one of the key things of is the realization of, and you mentioned three different organizations, all went through incredible change, and they're still going through change. Mm-hmm. And so I think the difference is you have to love it, embrace it, and actually you have to be fueled by change. I worked at Holliday for 20 years. It was a great run. We had a great time. But I needed to change after 20 years. Mm-hmm. My personality is that I don't like stagnation. I don't like to do the same thing over and over again. My career started in journalism, and then it started in advertising. And my first 4 jobs in advertising were 3 years each because I couldn't sit still. But in that time, I got experience at some great agencies, in Boston and Chicago, so that when I went to Holliday, and finally settled down for 20 years, and actually left for a year and went to Chicago, back to Chicago, a change was not. It wasn't something I was scared of. In fact, I was. I love it. I mean, I just love the challenge of it. It's not. I think that's the difference of that it's easier to lead when you're not afraid of change. Right. In fact, you just embrace it and love it.
How do you inspire that flexibility in a workforce? I understand how it works for you as a leader, and I think it's been a boon to you. How do you get the people like myself, ask my wife, I'm very resistant to change. Like, what could you say to me as an employee to help me get used to the idea of things are going to be different, but that can be okay. In fact, it could even be good.
Well, listen, I think that the examples, you have to, show examples of industries that where people didn't change, or companies where they didn't change, and they're extinct. Listen, I've worked at 4 agencies in Boston.
Wow.
The only one still alive and breathing is Holliday. Okay. Because the others kept doing what they were doing, and they you build a business model, you become profitable, and the last thing you want to do is to risk that. But if you don't, and you don't adapt, and you don't change, it's gone. Right. Within 5 or 10 years. So you have to you just have to convince people that they're better off being part of something that's changed, and then you have to support them when they take risks. They'll do things that don't work. That's part of adapting to change, and you have to support them. You have to. There needs to be an acceptance that failure does happen, and
it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
And not the end of the world.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Right.
I think that mentality of the business model is incredibly important, but the profitability is still the star of the show.
Yeah.
And if one of those things has to change, it should be the business model. Otherwise, I think that example of pointing out extinct, but like we see it a lot now of the Blockbuster example.
Yeah.
Of just king of the world for so long, kind of ignored what was happening in the market, and then a year later, it's completely gone. So I think for someone like me, as I mentioned, who is resistant to change, that kind of stark example of can keep doing it the old way, but this is what happens to you. It's probably a great reminder. So I think that's great advice.
Listen, in my time at Holliday, we pitched Blockbuster. We pitched Sears. Mm-hmm. The Sears pitch to me was the most illuminating because, at the time we brought in ideas that were business transformational. They wanted they thought ad campaigns were going to save the business. Mm-hmm. And we,
the old business model.
We had a fundamental idea, which was you take all your retail, which is dying space, you turn it into distribution centers, and you become the next Amazon, or you just become a digital powerhouse. Because you've got all that space at the South Shore Plaza.
Yep.
Nobody, go walk the floors. Nobody's there. Why is there nobody there? Because half the shelves are empty. It's over. I mean, they're retail. When we pitched it, and this was 15 years ago. Their business model was over then, and but you sat there and you just realized that the only thing they wanted were advertising ideas, and they thought that was going to save the company.
Couldn't let go.
So you knew you knew they were, when you left there, you knew they were toast. Mm-hmm. Blockbuster, we pitched it. We might have squeezed out 3 or 5 years, but they weren't going to be Netflix. Generally, in these, they're in the rooms, and they tend to denigrate Netflix, and Netflix, and then they're in trouble. I remember when I was working on the Top Flight golf business, and I was shooting a spot with 2 PGA tour pros, and we were in Chicago. We're shooting the spots. We're in between takes. We're sitting in chairs, and the news came out that Nike had signed Tiger Woods. And all there was denigration by the Top Flight people. That it was the dumbest thing they could ever do. the great Converse story of, Michael Jordan wore Converse at North Carolina, and he went up to Converse, and that was the first place he went with his agent, and he said he wanted the same compensation, the same deal that Magic Johnson and Larry Bird had, and he was told that you're not you're not Larry Bird or Magic Johnson. We'll see you later. Good luck, whatever you do.
Yeah.
And he went out to Beaverton, Oregon, and signed with Nike, and the rest is history. And so this is the stuff you see all the time. Yeah. And so if you're not gonna be part of those kind of new big ideas, you're gonna be gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Mike, like as I'm listening to you, I think you have so much experience, and you definitely seem like someone that does not want to stand still, which I can relate to. I'm definitely not a person that likes to stand still either, but it can be exhausting. You know what I mean? I think at some point people kind of like want to achieve that homeostasis in their life, and even like they just achieve a level and like don't know where to go from there. I guess like what motivates you to keep moving, to keep finding these different areas to really invest in and grow and expand? I'm curious.
Well, I don't like to sit still. I knew when I was in my kind of final years at Holliday, I knew that I loved to work and I loved to do things, but I didn't at that point. I think I was 52 when I left. I didn't want a job. Like I didn't want, I love to work. I don't want a job. And I think that's kind of even when I did the Globe thing, I did it for. Oops, sorry about that. When I did the Globe thing, I did it for 3 years, right from the start, because I knew 36 months is that's a short car loan. You can do it. You can do anything. You can do anything for 36 months, but it was still it was a job. It was you have an office, you have a desk, and I like to manage by being present. Okay. So you don't have a lot of options. You got to be there, and that's just not like I love to work and I love change and I love doing new things. I just don't like doing the same thing over and over and over. I don't care how well it's going.
Cool.
I just don't want to do it over and over again. I just get bored. I remember driving to my first day at the Globe and being very excited. That for the first time in a long time, I was driving to work with a pit in my stomach.
Yeah.
Because the nervous energy.
And I listen. I didn't have that. We were on an incredible run until Holliday. It was great.
Yeah.
We had a great team. It was amazing, and but I didn't have a pit in my stomach anymore. Yeah. The machine was running very well, and so that was. But I liked that feeling. Yeah. I just like that feeling of not knowing, if this is going to work out or what you're going to walk into. And believe me, that was walking into something that, I probably anticipated 25% of what I would walk into when I walked into the Globe.
What would the other 75%, if I could say? Like, what were some of the things that you did not see coming that really wowed you in terms of taking over that organization at that time?
Well, listen, I came in the right when John and Linda bought it, right? And they bought it. The New York Times, it had been owned by the Taylor family forever. It was, those presses printed money for over 100 years. It was high revenue, incredibly profitable. If you were an advertiser, you had to be in the Globe. Yep. I mean, everybody remembers the Thanksgiving Day Boston Globe that you had. You needed a forklift to put in your living room.
The size of a phone book.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, exactly. And those full page ads were $50,000 each. Yeah. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And then, after the New York Times paid a huge premium for it. I don't know, $1.2 billion they paid for it. They bled it dry. Yep. There was the focus for them was the New York Times. It wasn't the Globe, and they sucked out expenses. They didn't invest. And in that time, when everyone was kind of longing for the good old days to return, It was really apparent that they were never going to return, and that was kind of the enjoyable part of doing it was, when John and Linda bought it, there was no ambiguity that the Globe was going digital, and we were going to charge for it, and that's one thing, even as a when I was in the agency business, I greatly resented giving away ideas for free.
Yeah.
And I think
As we all do.
still see that. Oh, you still see clients like, oh, well, give me the strategy for free, and I'll go from there.
Yeah, exactly.
And I fought it tooth and nail on the agency side, and I think that's one thing that the Globe's done probably better than any other major metro daily in the country, is they charge for their content, and they don't apologize for it, and they charge a premium for it because it's worth a premium, and they get it, and subscriptions are growing, and they've been growing for 5, 6, 7 years, and that's they just did what others didn't have the the
Gumption.
the real or the guts to do. Oh yeah. Well, there was this false belief that it was all about eyeballs, and if you got eyeballs, everything else was good.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. It's about these are business enterprises. It was about money and revenue, and the Globe's done that. So I think that was, and I think that the New York Times has done well. I think the Wall Street Journal set the tone for it. The Journal has never given away their content from day one. The Globe had two things. They had Boston.com and Boston Globe, and there was ambiguity. One's free, one you got to pay for. Why would I pay for one? I get one for free. And that's one thing John and Linda had a real clear vision for is if you create a quality product, and it's a premium product, and it is, you got to charge for it, and that's that will be the saving grace of the Globe versus other major metro dailies in the country, because the Chicago Tribune was just bought by Alden Capital. That will be a shell of itself in 12 months from now, because they just strip out costs, and that's what you see in a lot of cities. But I think Boston's going to John will go down as having saved an institution, which is a really important institution.
Two of them, if you look at his track record after he
bought
the Sox.
Listen, it's in Liverpool. I mean, it's he's done it across the board, and that's a feather in the cap,
Well, so interesting. So John had a vision. You agreed with the vision, or at least bought into it enough. What was it like in the newsroom? Because I imagine, if we talked about earlier, people who are reluctant to change. My time in that industry was very few people more reluctant to change than a editor at a desk in a major city newspaper. So what was the attitude there when you went in and said the good old days aren't coming back?
There was an understanding that obviously the world is changing, and given that the layoffs that had happened at the Globe, in over the past 20 years in the newsroom, they've really, Brian McGrory, the editor, has done a great job of keeping it. It's still staffed, very, very well. It's not overstaffed, but it's staffed well. And so I think they, as a group, I think they feel, they wish. I think you kind of wish for a different era, but there's an acceptance that the world has changed. And listen, it's hard not to, because they cover a changing world. I mean, God, that's what they do. That's what they do every day, and I think that there's an understanding that you're working at a paper that has the Spotlight team, and I think the Spotlight team has more journalists on it now than they probably did 7 or 8 years ago, and that's but it's challenging, because it's not, it's not what it was.
Yeah. That setting expectations of what's feasible versus what you wish could be is
Right.
Which I feel like
a distinctive. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're dealing with that a lot now at Cramer in the switch to virtual.
I feel like even like the turn to virtual events, like for our clients at first, like Trip and I are both creative directors here, did live events, like our whole mindset was live in person and then virtual, like people knew they had to do it. But I think now getting back, like 2021, we've been able to do like virtual and online and digital really well. So now like how does that integrate?
Right. And it's been surprising. So for years, a big part of my job was beating this drum of there's nothing that can ever replace that in-person connection that we help create for our clients. And I still believe that very strongly. However, when that was taken away from us quite literally by COVID, it was like, okay, everything I've been saying for the past couple of years, I need to now rethink, because if that's truly true, what are we going to do? We're out of business. And as it turned out, as the virtual meetings started to take off, I realized there was all these other capabilities that I had not previously been really paying attention to, or at least not close enough. The way it offered different metrics, the way you could expand the reach of how these things, how far they can go. I was like, oh, there's a lot of value here. I still think the in-person connection is incredibly important, but that doesn't mean you can throw the baby out with the bathwater of all the things that virtual offers too. And now it's become, retraining my brain on how to think of these things of both value of each and separate, but both pretty good.
Yeah. And even just, I think we're talking about the globe, right? Whether digital or you're buying it, it's about the content.
The content
too,
is
which
perfect
we live,
example.
eat, and breathe, right?
Yep.
Like if the content is good, whether it's in person or live, whether it's digital or you're grabbing it off the shelf, you know what I mean? That's what's really important.
Yes.
And that's what's really going to engage people.
They're not paying for the newsprint.
And I would challenge you if the Globe newsroom, 250 journalists. Back on Morrissey Boulevard, you'd walk through there on a busy towards deadline, and there'd be, probably 150 of them there at a time, and there's vibrant, and there's energy. And then that changes overnight, right?
Yep.
And everyone's working from home.
Oh, yeah.
And they're sourcing material, not on their feet, not face to face by and large. But I would challenge you to look at the coverage in the Globe the past year, and be able to tell that there was COVID in the world,
right?
Other than the coverage of COVID,
outside of the headlines,
but which may or may not have been overdone, but I would challenge you to recognize that there was anything different in the world. So I think they were ready. If you ask about the newsroom, they're now ready. They were prepared for anything. A newsroom is a little bit like an emergency room in a hospital, or no matter what, the job gets done. They figure out a way, and I think they were prepared for it. They were ready, having no idea what was coming. I think having been what they'd been through the past 20 years, they're ready for change, and I think that's reflected in the success they've been having.
Mike, lastly, you mentioned the restaurant, and I'd love just to hear a little bit about that, because I think it's interesting as somebody that has worked in bars, been a patron of bars. I know it is deceptively difficult work with a thin profit margin, depending on how you're doing. And I just want to know a little bit of what your experience has been like there. And tell me a little bit about what's it like managing a kitchen staff versus an advertising staff. Two very different classes of people in terms of what's expected of them, what they're doing. And I'd just love to get your take on how they're alike and how they're different.
Yeah, listen, it's there are similarities, particularly because in the kitchen you've got there's a high degree of creativity. There's certainly perfection, perfection in the quality of the food. Yep. You're always aiming for whatever goes out to be perfect. And there's the allergy side of it, which is it has to be, you can't make a mistake. We've got a gluten-free fryer, and so people have to be on their toes to make sure that we're not serving anything that's that's not, that could be hazardous.
Dangerous. New level of detail.
Totally. And but I think it's it's a little different, and it's been eye-opening certainly for me, because it's a transient business. They've the folks who work in the kitchen have, what I've experienced, have tended to be treated not particularly well where they've worked before, and almost disposable. If you don't like it, we'll go get another one.
Yep.
And that's just never been the way that I've operated. I mean, I try to create an environment where people are valued, and we actually have some people who've been with us from the beginning.
Great.
And that's kind of it's kind of the goal. But it's you have to treat people very similarly. You can't treat them any differently. You have to the golden rule.
Yeah.
How would you want to be treated? You just got to treat them well, and hope they return the favor.
Great philosophy.
Yeah.
And probably speaks to some of your success. Clearly that's worked out for you in a lot of different places. So there's got to be some truth to it. Can't just be making it all.
It always has. Yeah, you got to be people. They're not commodities. And everyone has different issues. And you just gotta listen too. You can't just. Nobody owes you anything. You have to treat them well.
Well, Mike, you've really inspired me as someone who never wants to stay still. You're living proof that it definitely works to your advantage. So thank you.
What do you want? What do you want? What do you want your obituary to read? What do you want to do with your life? Seriously.
They died.
I mean, there are
doing
people.
what they loved.
No, seriously. Listen. I'm not like a workaholic. I mean, I've certainly the way that I've managed it by working without having a job. I don't spend time doing that which I don't want to do. Mm-hmm. I think that's or doing it with people with whom I don't want to work.
Right.
I think that is key. That and I do manage my time well. I'm not a big golfer. I can't imagine. I belong to a club. I haven't set foot on it for 3 years. It's fine, but I don't want to spend 5 hours doing that when I can be productive.
Yeah.
So I don't know. You just want to be productive.
Yeah. Stay engaged. What's the cliche?
Yeah. Exactly.
Love what you do, and you'll never work a day in your life. And I don't know if that's particularly accurate, but I do think we're only here for a certain amount of time, and you got to do something, so you might as well enjoy it. And to your point, it might as well be productive and God willing, allow for more connections and engagements with other people.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And if you don't like it, if you don't like what you're doing, leave.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never had an option. Everything I've ever done. When I stopped wanting to do it, I stopped doing it. And I made it my choice and said, enough's enough. I want to go do something else. There's got to be something
else
that
a lot of courage.
will, challenge me more. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think it just takes you just got to break the habit.
Well, Mike, it's been a pleasure.
Yes,
inspiring
thank you so
and
much.
just good, real concrete stuff.
My pleasure. Thanks. Have a great day, you guys.
Okay. Take care, my friend.
Bye.
See you. Thanks. Bye-bye.
That was awesome.
That was great. Yeah.
Knowledgeable guy, been through a lot, learned a lot. Very humble despite all his success.
Yeah.
And I think it was the thing I like the most is hearing about the way he talked about the most exciting day that he can remember in his recent career life was he was in his mid-50s or something, driving to the Globe with a pit in his stomach on his first day of work, and how that was the best day of work he's had in a long time. I thought that was super interesting and a little inspiring as someone that does not personally deal well with change and has been forced to deal with a lot of change over the past 18 months. To hear him articulate that of it's okay, be uncomfortable, find some creative passion or some fire or at least some energy out of that uncomfortableness and then use it to your advantage, I think is great advice.
No, yeah, I love that. And I think, especially after this year, I think dealing with so much change, I really related to, I feel like having a pit in my stomach was the whole year of working in 2020, either like whether being at home or here. So it's really inspiring to see, I think, that like through these tough times that change can really happen and actually work to our advantage. You know, it's kind of that light at the end of the tunnel, as you would say.
It's something to work towards, and having a specific example of somebody like that who's like, I have been through this change, I've been through that change. The one thing I can tell you is that the universal answer is you do get through it. Just try to be nimble, try to keep an open mind. This idea of we are ultimately working towards something and there is going to be success on the other side of the tunnel at the other end 6 months from now, whatever your timeline is. But the idea is you are working towards something. And if you can just be comfortable in the change, be hardworking, be open-minded, and just kind of trust the process, that even though you might not know exactly what's going to happen right in front of you, you know where you want to end up, I think is like great advice.
It's the secret to the sauce.
Secret to the sauce. Secret to making it through 20 and 21. For sure.
Like always, I'm Elise Orlowski.
I'm Trip Underwood.
Awesome. And we'll see you on the next episode of Pivot Points.